So we're kicking off the festivities with a major win for the Alabama Crimson Tide as they are able to flip the number 2 tackle, 5-star offensive lineman Kadyn Proctor from Iowa to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Today, we need to talk about why this is such a big win for Alabama, what this means going forward, and why, if you've been paying attention to this 2023 recruiting class, this class could be special for the Crimson Tide. Before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited that Proctor joins this class? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below as those interactions are massive. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, who is Kadyn Proctor? Kadyn Proctor comes in as the number 12 overall prospect in the nation per 24/7 Sports Composite and the number 2 offensive tackle. He was a long-time Iowa commit, but whenever he committed to Iowa, it was a 2-team race between Iowa and Alabama. Now, he's from Iowa, so not many people were surprised whenever he chose to stay home. However, Alabama stayed really consistent in this battle. They know that the offensive line is a major position of need going forward and something that Coach Wolford has been able to successfully address. Now, that doesn't mean that the offensive line is a complete project or that it's not going to be continued to be worked on, but he has shown strides, and they've certainly been able to get big wins in terms of this recruiting class because Kadyn Proctor is the crown jewel of the offensive line class Alabama has been able to sign. And personally, I had him as my number 1 offensive lineman in the nation, and I've maintained that ever since I first saw his film. And this, in my opinion, is a really good offensive line class. So for me to think that he's the number 1, that's saying something because there are a lot of really good offensive linemen this year. Don't believe me? Just look at Alabama's class. We've talked about Kadyn Proctor, 6'7", 330 pounds from Iowa, who Freddie Roach and Coach Eric Wolford were able to successfully get to the Crimson Tide, a huge win. But it doesn't just end there. There's also Wilkin Formby, who's a top 100 prospect in the nation and a top 10 offensive lineman. It's not just them. There's Alinen, who's a really intriguing prospect, 6'6", 315 pounds, a top 200 offensive lineman. You have Miles McBay, who comes in as the number 200 overall prospect in the nation, 6'6", 358 pounds. And they're not alone. You have McElderry, who's a really intriguing guard, and personally, I think is a little bit underrated, coming in as a 4-star, 375th in the nation. So this offensive line class for the Alabama Crimson Tide is really an intriguing get, and I like every single addition, but there's no doubt that the crown jewel of it is Kadyn Proctor, and it is a huge flip and big for the Alabama offensive line as they're going to continue to look to make strides. But what does this mean for Alabama's recruiting class as a whole? And if you've been around the channel for any extended period of time, you've probably heard me talk about and say that the 2023 class for Alabama could be one you had to watch out for. In fact, I went as far as to say it could be the class that breaks Texas A&M's record that they set last cycle, getting in a class that ranked 333.13 points, which is just absurd. They had 8 5-stars, 24 stars if I remember off the top of my head. It was an absurd class. And this Alabama class, well, this is one that has a chance of catching it. Because with the addition of Kadyn Proctor, Alabama now sits at 318.58 points with 25 commits. And if we look at some names who are expected to sign with Alabama, there's James Smith and Rusaw. 2 more 5-stars who Alabama desperately wants to sign. And James Smith is a guy I've talked about on the channel and said that's about as much of a must-land prospect for Alabama as there is this cycle. But if both of them sign with Alabama, that would put them at 326.06 points. And this one is a long shot, but if Desmond Ricks decides to commit to Alabama, that would put them at 328.97 points. If Ricks doesn't and Alabama lands Damari Brown instead, that would put them at 326.50 points, but that's going to be a recruiting battle we have to watch as well because Miami seems to be trending really well there as well. So Alabama's recruiting class is in striking distance of Texas A&M's all-time recruiting class from a season ago. Can they catch it remains to be seen, but what we do know without a shadow of a doubt is this Alabama class, top to bottom, is really special. If we look at the 24/7 Sports rankings themselves, not the composite, with the addition of Kadyn Proctor, Alabama now has 3 top 10 players in this class: Keon Keeley, Caleb Downs, and Kadyn Proctor. And if we look at the 24/7 Sports composite, they have 3 top 15 players. players. Same 3 I just listed. Suffice to say, this class for the Crimson Tide is a really special class. And if you listen to the naysayers and doubters around college football, you may have been convinced that Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide's reign is done. But personally, you've got to show me it's done first. Alabama was just in the national championship last year, and they had 2 losses this year. Any team in college football would be over the moon with 3 losses in a 2-year span. That would be grounds for a raise for almost every other coach in the nation, but somehow the naysayers and doubters are trying to convince you that for Nick Saban, that means it's done. Do you know why? Because that's the standard Alabama has set. And until they completely fall off, that's the standard they look to maintain. And look at this recruiting class. Is it not proof of the standard Alabama looks to maintain? Yet another #1 recruiting class, and if we look top to bottom, this class is insane. It really, really is. So this Crimson Tide recruiting class, I've been trying to say it to anybody that would listen for the past year, it's one that could be really special. And we need to keep an eye on it going forward, but I can't wait to see what other wins they're able to add in. Hop down to the comments, let me know how you think they end up. That's it. See ya.